Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to HGO, the show where we talk about everything that's hot in the world of gaming. I'm one of your hosts, Ethan, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host with the co-most. It's Hunter. Hey, Hunter, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing just swell today. Here
Very-
to talk about a nice video game.
Very cool. We're also joined by Kane himself, the guy that I keep forgetting if I have an intro for you or not. So, Kane, you're that special. You're just Kane. There you go. Hey, Kane. You doing
Sweet.
good?
Well, I'll take it.
You're probably grateful, to be honest, because everyone else hates their names. So I think, like, for the most part, I think Hunter likes his because it's a pun, but everyone else hates theirs. So
Yeah.
I think you should just
I'm
be
pretty
grateful.
sure Kyle was tickled by his.
Yeah, because it just came out of nowhere. I just felt like saying it, and it just kind of stuck. Whereas Sam hates his, and Jack does not like his either, but we just keep him anyway because, hey, they can't deny me what I want. But hey, yeah, this is HGO, where every week we come together to talk about everything that's hot in the world of gaming. You can find us every Monday, 5 p.m. UK time, 12 p.m. Eastern on podcast services everywhere and on YouTube at bit.ly/thegiggers. If you can get us to 100 subs, that'd be great. We'd really appreciate it. Bit of housekeeping. From this point onward, content light, we're going into the Christmas period. We are pre-recording 2 podcasts this week so that you have this Spoilercast this week, and then next week you'll have our favorite games of the year talk. So look forward to that. We will not be taking a week off. The week that everyone else seems to be taking off, we're not taking off. We might take the week after off, though. We haven't decided yet based on New Year. But you'll at least have one episode next week. So after you're bored of your family, you'll at least be able to listen to us ramble about games like we always do. Other than that, remember, Hunter released an Age of Calamity review, so if you want to go check that out, we'd greatly appreciate it. And if you can leave us some positive ratings on podcast services, that'd be greatly appreciated. So, I'm just going to get straight into it. Enough rambling. It's a spoiler cast. People are here for what they want to see. So we're going to start it off, just spoiler light. You'll get like 3-4 minutes of general impressions, and then we'll say spoilers, get the fuck out if you haven't played it. Because for some reason, people like to click on spoiler casts, not playing the game, and then go, oh wait, there's spoilers, as if they can't read. So it's happened. It's happened before. I had a friend that was like, I was going to go watch your Last of Us Part 2 podcast, but you said there'd be spoilers, so I left. I'm like, well, yeah, it's a spoiler cast. We had a first impressions the week before. What are you doing? But hey, there you go. It happens.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
But yeah, so if you haven't played, then your 5-minute warning starts now. But hey, starting it off, guys, I guess the question, I'm going to throw this question. What were your general thoughts, opinions of the game as a whole, spoiler-free, for those people that haven't watched the original episode? I'll start with you, Hunter. What's your general gist? What's your 1-minute take? If you had to review the game right now, which you didn't because it took you too long, what would you say?
I'd say overall I liked it more than the first game just because it trims the fat in a lot of areas and adds a little wrinkle to the combat that made it more interesting. And I think the more focused and personal story was also helpful.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So,
and to add, you played it on PS4.
I did, yeah.
Kane, you played it on PS4 Pro. What are your general thoughts on it? We've got all 3 consoles here, so it's pretty great.
I thought it was good. The original Spider-Man, the PS4, I liked a lot, and this kind of follows in its footsteps. Doesn't really shake up the formula too much. Simplifies some of the fighting mechanics with the power-ups by taking all these weird web things and just giving you a one kind of punch to win combo that works really well in all circumstances. Otherwise, it's just kind of a quality of life improvement, and it's just more Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. And then I played it on PS5, which is why I wasn't in the first impressions the first time around. But I'll let you ask about PS5 specific questions if you have any in a minute. But general gist is I agree. It very much trimmed down the fat. I've been playing Spider-Man Remaster actually in my off time when I've had a chance. And you don't really notice how much they actually trimmed the fat and the pacing of the game until you go back and realize how long-winded the original was. Like, it's just even stuff that you just kind of take for granted. Like, oh yeah, I forgot that I had to go around the entire map syncing those towers up before I could then go around the entire map looking for 50 backpacks until I could then go and find 30 photos around this damn map. The amount of trimming down where they're just like, a lot of things are available, or if there's collectibles, there's only a dozen of them, if that. Like, they very much did trim the fat down. And yeah, the story's a lot more personal, and I liked it quite a bit. Both in the small plays that it did with Miles as a character, building up Harlem and his family and everything like that. But then also, for future content as well, they gave us a bit to look forward to as well, which we'll mention eventually, which is something that I didn't even put in the timestamp. So there we go. I just reminded myself. Do you guys have any questions about the PS5 version? Because you didn't. You kind of got
Um,
performance. You got
Other
performance.
than loads, can't imagine like you're gonna have too much of a performance boost. And except for the higher resolution, there was some higher options there, but
There's
you know,
three. Yeah,
faster loads, higher res.
there's three modes. There's as of recording the spoilercast, there was three modes. There was resolution mode, which was basically the the PS4/PS4 Pro version on steroids, where it was true 4K, 30 FPS, locked, with ray tracing. Which I played for all of 90 seconds before getting motion sick and going no. There's the mode I played it on, which was performance mode, which is higher resolution than PS4 Pro. I think it's around 1800. At a full lock, 60 FPS, so double the frame rate of the PS4 version. And that lock is fixed, and that's the way I chose to play it. It's fucking great. Um, if you do eventually get a PS5, and you played it on PS4, play it again on PS5 because the difference in the jump in frame rate that it does to that experience, fucking great. I loved it. And then the third option was for 1080. It's basically 60 FPS with ray tracing with an even lower resolution than performance. And I touched it for a bit, and I was like, that's cool. Ray tracing reflections are kind of interesting. They're a bit of a sham, to be honest. I don't really care for them because once you're swinging, you don't care. And I'm like, I prefer the higher resolution and textures of the performance mode, so I just stuck with performance. So there you go. But no, the PS5 version, very good. Apparently it's a bit buggy and a bit crashy, but ironically, it didn't crash on me a single time. I played through
I
the
had
entire
the
game with zero bugs or zero crashes. Mine worked perfectly throughout.
I had the
Nice.
PS4 version, soft hard lock once, soft lock 3 times, and
Oh wow,
almost corrupt my save.
I
that's
don't.
just bad
I
luck.
don't
That
know.
didn't happen to me at all.
I don't know how I got through the most buggy version without finding a single bug, but I genuinely went through it in its entirety, platinumed it, even did a new game plus run to run with the odds. I was like, but no.
Yeah, the biggest issue I was running into was if you mash X too fast, you could soft lock yourself out of dialogues and just be stuck on a screen.
Oh, nice.
Oh
Did not know
no.
about that. But no, at least on the 60 FPS mode, can't really talk about the fidelity mode because the 30 FPS was an instant deal breaker for me. Especially when 60's there, when the game's made for 30, which this one it kind of is. I was like, it's acceptable. I can see why people play it, but when you have the option to just double the frame rate real quick with no real differences except for the reflections aren't as real. I'm like, cool, I'll take it. Because man, playing Spider-Man in 60 FPS is really cool, and I hope this is something that carries on with PlayStation's exclusives going forward, which it is with Ratchet. I hope Horizon has it, and I really hope God of War does too, because that'd be great. Um, but no, other than that, I think that's general impressions out of the way. So, spoiler warning, it's time. As we like to say on the podcast, get the fuck out if you haven't played the game yet, because you've got no holding barred. You can say whatever you want. No restrictions. Nothing. You're free to talk about Miles Morales. So here we go. Let's start off with the first boss of the game, which I think everyone's seen because I think it was in the promotional material. What
Wasn't.
we it was in some of the promotional material. I know that much.
Mm.
Opening thoughts, guys. What were your original thoughts of the Rhino fight and the Venom stuff? What do you think? I'll throw it.
Eh,
Because I think
eh.
I think it's
It was too easy.
I
I
thought it
agree.
was a good way to. It was an all right opening set piece to get you back into the world. I think.
Yeah, the opening was fine. The second I saw Rhino, I was already just like, "Ugh, I don't want to see this guy again."
I mean, yeah, out of all the villains for them to pick, I'm like, yeah, Rhino's probably the least interesting of them to pick. It makes sense down the line why that was the one that they picked because they were just like, oh, that's the one we can easily manipulate. Um, but at the same time, it did kind of feel just a bit like, oh, again, like, are we really doing this? Is to the point now where they leave Rhino obviously on a cliffhanger later on of, did he survive? Is he okay? I assume he survived. I just hope he's not fucking
course.
back. If the
Oh,
option
he'll
is,
be back.
if the option is
He'll
it's
be back.
Spider-Man 2 or he's dead, I'm like, yeah, you can fucking keep it. You can kill him because I've had enough of him now. Full boss fights in. I've had enough. But the Venom, the actual like the way that Miles gets his Venom powers, I thought was cool though. I did actually like that kind of defense mechanism, back the fuck off, punch in the face. I thought that was quite
Yeah,
like
I thought that was really good.
quite cool. Even though it miffs me, I don't understand how Spider-Man in the last game was perfectly fine taking on two of these guys at a time, two of the Sinister Six at a time in a boss fight, fighting Rhino and Vulture at the same time.
But now that he has help,
But now that there's two Spider-Men, all of a sudden Rhino just has the power to beat the shit out of Peter and have him nearly dead. I was like, that's interesting.
Oh, I can accept that. It's not always like that matchup. Spider-Man versus Rhino isn't a guaranteed win for Spider-Man. If it's just 1v1, Rhino can get the upper hand, and it just didn't go his way that day.
Yeah, and
I can accept that.
I assume it's got something to do with not all of Peter's like mentality being focused on Rhino. He was also probably worrying about Miles and keeping Miles safe at the same time. So it was probably something to do with that that also didn't help. I just thought it was funny.
But the most frustrating thing about that, I do have to say, was that the rope broke. And that was the entire setup to Rhino getting loose. Is that they're the whole opening sequence made no sense to me. Where they're like, we're flying this helicopter through the middle of New York City. Wait, why? Just take it down the river. Like, don't fly through the middle of the city. And then it's flying through the middle of the city, and a rope breaks. And they're like, it's Miles' fault. And it's like, no. Well, the safety factor on these ropes should be stupidly high. There's no reason physically that rope should break. The plot made no sense. I was so mad that rope broke.
I was just laughing because, like, here in the UK, there's actually a law where helicopters in London can only fly over the river. Like, that's a law because if a helicopter crashes, it crashes in the water and people tend to survive. That's why there's very few deaths in helicopter crashes in London. So to me, just the idea of being like, we're going to fly a helicopter right through the fucking skyscrapers of Manhattan with Rhino attached to it. I'm like, yeah, that's a fight.
Not only just Rhino, but Rhino and then another one with random other inmates. Why are there other inmates there?
This sounds like a goofy villain plot more than an actual prison transportation.
It would have made
it's like, oh, let's just attach Rhino to a rope and swing him around a helicopter.
It would have made more sense if it was kind of Krieger and Roxon being like, oh, we'll handle the transportation, and going, oops, we fucked it up. I guess we'll deal with Rhino ourselves because everyone's vulnerable, and then manipulating him. They could have just very easily wrote it off as, oh, it was Roxon that was transporting him, and it was kind of a setup. Instead of it just being, oh no, the rope broke, oopsie doopsie. Now I guess Miles has to beat up all these thugs that somehow get away. That was also my favorite part, was like 12 of them show up, then another 6 in a car, and then all of a sudden they're all in a van. I'm like, I swear
they planned this.
Yeah,
what?
Yeah, it's like, oh, we planned it all along. Not only did we accidentally fall out of the sky, but now our mates come in a van and he picks us all up. Like, what the fuck is this? But no, I do want to give a shout out to the J. Yeah, it sounds completely.
I just thought of something else, like because of that. I'm like, somehow they figured out that they were the specific rope that was going to be used in sabotage.
Like just that makes it sound even sillier. Trying to cut the rope beforehand.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just use a saw to cut steel. I'm gonna do it.
I also want to know what Rhino was doing, because, like, obviously Rhino was just on a rampage, right? But the amount of circles that Rhino did while Spidey was on him, dude, like, they went around the same block about 3 or 4 times before Rhino was like, hang on, let's go to the fucking energy plant. Now we're talking. Like, it was just funny. I was just like, nah. I do want to give a shout out to the J. Jonah Jameson scene, though. I did think that was fucking funny, where he's just preparing for his podcast, and then Rhino just smashes the door down and he just sees the 2 Spider-Men.
No, that also really confused me, because it's like, J. Jonah Jameson's got this big podcast. He's a big news guy. He should be in the loop on everything. It's been minutes where Rhino's going through the middle of the city, and no one's come in and been like, Rhino's rampaging through the middle of the city. No, he just burst through, and he's just, no, what? He should know.
Yeah, but no, it was very like superhero film.
There's so many moments of that where like nobody has a clue. Like you call your mom. Your mom calls during it. It's like, oh, you're chasing Rhino. Wait, no, there's a chase at some point where your mom calls, and it's like she should know that like at this point it's 10 minutes into the Rhino rampage. Send out the alert. Rhino's rampaging.
Come home.
Everybody
Yeah,
seek
Rhino's on a
shelter.
rampage. Come home. Yeah, like. Also,
Just avoid the train.
now that you've mentioned it, actually, Miles's mum actually says when Miles is like, "I'm gonna go check downtown for some milk because Teo doesn't have it." She actually even says, "Oh, remember though, they're scheduling to a prisoner to go like so." Even the public knew about this fucking helicopter, so they could have very easily tampered with it or shot a fucking rocket launcher at it because everyone has a rocket launcher in Spider-Man world. So it's so
yeah,
funny
you're
that it's a
right.
rope that breaks. They could have very easily the crew's like friends could have very easily been like, "Oh, they're going down this street. Let's get a rocket launcher and fire it at the thing." That's what.
Heck, they could have just flown a kite off a building and got it caught. Like they're at building level. Just throw something.
That's funny though. But
You
no.
don't need rocket launchers.
Oh well, it's funny to nip it, but it's funny though. But then you have the scene with Peter, where Peter's like, "I'm fucking out, boys. It's been real. I'm going on holiday.
Yep, 4-week vacation.
You can handle this, right? Here, have my Spidey suit." Which can I just say? At first, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be
An
really."
ugly suit.
Yeah, can I just say? At first, I was going to be like, "That's going to be really lame if Peter's the one that gives Miles his unique suit." I thought that was going to be really lame. And then when it turns out that it wasn't, but it was a worse suit than even the one he was using at the start of 2018 Spider-Man, it was like, what? You couldn't have even given
It
it
was
back.
kind of funny.
I thought it was funny.
He's just like, I've made you your first suit, and it's made out of hand-me-downs, and it looks like shit. Have fun. Like, I was like, I would have carried on wearing my hoodie.
If you give him a suit like that, it would promote him to create his own.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
Peter was just being cheap.
Yeah, it is.
That's also possible. The man
up a new suit for him. That looks hideous.
It is kind of funny though. I guess we should mention Krieger and Roxon as well, because Roxon's introduced at the end of that fight, where he's like, "Oh, we'll let the cops deal with it. We'll watch over Rhino while the cops." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay. Let's leave this business exec with Rhino. I'm sure that'll end up well." I was like, "Yeah, they're really going to hand him to the police, aren't they?" But I guess let's move on to Underground and Roxon, because that's kind of the main two factions of the game. Basically, you obviously have the Underground, who are led by the Tinkerer, who are this rogue group of teens, especially teens, and they're basically they were basically a gang that weren't doing so hot, and then the Tinkerer was like, "I can help," as essentially the kind of thing, because I think they mentioned that they had something. Fisk was also involved at some point, and then
there's if you do all the dungeons and stuff, you get kind of the backstory of the Underground and how they interacted with the other gangs.
Yeah, but no. It was Martin Lee's gang gets a mention. They were like they kind of just rose to power because of the power vacuum that was left after the original.
And then what's the? I can't remember all the villains.
Obviously, no. Kingpin got fucked because he was already in the raft, and then obviously the Martin Lee and the demons had obviously left.
Tombstone. That's another one that they interact.
Oh yeah. Oh, I always forget about the Spider-Man DLC because it was so fucking forgettable that I just whoosh, like when when they mentioned Tombstone in this game, I was like, oh cool, they're setting up a villain for the next one, and I was like, oh wait, no, Tombstone's already been in Marvel Spider-Man. He was in the DLC. I'm like, oh well.
Wasn't he in the
wasn't he
main
in the
series?
base game?
He was in the base game.
Was he in the base game?
Yeah, Mary Jane.
Hammerhead was the one that was only in the DLC.
Yeah, Tombstone was in the main game.
Can you tell how much that I paid attention to this?
Aren't you playing back through it right now?
I mean, if we're being realistic, I'm realistic. I've just got the white spider suit and I'm doing all the side stuff. Is essentially what I've been doing. I'm very early into that game because I keep getting distracted with things. I'm not gonna lie. So I will remember eventually. But no, I just thought that was funny. But what? So you've got your two main factions this time instead of the Underground. Instead of having Martin Lee's demons and what was the fucking group called? No, it wasn't Fisk. Who was the militia that came in?
That was what's her name? Sable. Yep.
Yeah, but I don't remember what the name of their militia was called because she was just running the militia. But those two, how do you feel the Underground were compared to those two? Because in my opinion, I really liked Martin Lee and the Demons. I thought Martin Lee was a really cool villain to bring into Spider-Man. So much so, I
Yeah.
was kind of pissed when the Sinister Six stuff kind of happened, because I was kind of liking how personal it was with a new character, because I hadn't really experienced Martin Lee before. So to bring all these
Yeah,
others
the
in, I
Mr.
was kind of
Negative
like,
stuff in the first one was real good.
but for me, the fucking Sable and that other group, I fucking hated that group of a passion. I thought it was terribly implemented. I thought the fucking they were super overpowered. With their
Yeah, they
rocket
were the
launchers
just
and
we're gonna
jetpacks
have
and wings.
jetpacks and
Yeah.
rocket launchers. Have fun, and that's when I'm
Uh,
like, I'm gonna stop doing the enemy camps now.
You
yeah,
just web them and then stick them to stuff. That's
yeah, but it was
It
the
was
still
only
still
way.
boring and repetitive.
True, but
But to me, I thought that Roxon were they were your standard militia in this game, and I thought that they were pretty forgettable, to be honest. But at the same time,
Yeah.
they were better than Sable's group just because they were at least manageable. But I thought the Underground as a group of like enemies to go against was actually quite fun and interesting, especially with their matter weapons that could I wish that they'd done more with the actual like like with the I don't know what you call it, but the changing weapons that can just change in an
Mm-hmm.
instant. Because I liked the idea of them. Because the one thing I thought they were going to do when they were like, oh, they can transmogrify. That's the fucking word, I got it. When it's like they can transmogrify the weapons, when they brought out a shield, I was like, oh, are we gonna have enemies that switch between the fucking different stances, like just
You
based
see,
on it? I was
that
like,
would have been
that would have been
cool
cool. But then
instead
I
of
got
having
myself
just enemy
overexcited.
types.
yeah.
Because I thought, oh, that'd be really cool if the game noticed that you kept just hitting them in the air and fucking doing the same things, so they all changed what they were doing. But not the kind of. But I at least thought the neon was cool.
Yeah, they look cool. I think ultimately all the enemies you can kind of see that they just reskinned and repurposed resources from the original Spider-Man,
Yeah,
and they didn't really add new stuff. They just kind of switched it up for the most part. Made it
yeah.
look different.
Yeah, they sure made to have the rocket launchers early.
I think it's funny that they kind of do it as a joke as well. Like within the first 10 minutes, you have this guy just come up and he just whips it out, and fucking Miles is like, "Oh, for God's sake, no, not the rocket launcher!"
Dude, there's just so many times in Spider-Man I never get hit by a rocket at long range. It's
Yeah.
always just a guy standing next to me that just points and fires it.
Yeah,
He doesn't care that he's gonna blow up in the process.
Yeah, it's
and probably not even kill Spider-Man because he's
it's
superhuman.
so
He's just gonna
funny.
blow himself up for the
So
cause.
funny. It's so funny how suicidal the enemies are, dude. Where it's just like rocket launch. Spider-Man's 2 meters from me. Should I hit him now? Just rip out my rocket launcher real quick and just fire.
Whip it out, step closer, and then fire.
It always makes me laugh as well. It's like you have the reaction. Yeah, obviously you can like some of the projectiles you can L1 R1 where you can swing it around. My favorite part is when they fire it at you, and you can very clearly see that Miles has webbed it and has started spinning it around himself, and they all just stand there in awe, going, "What's he gonna do with it?" Like none of them.
I didn't see that happening.
Yeah, no, yeah. They just start following it, going shiny. They don't go, "Oh fuck, let's get out the
He
way of the rocket."
hypnotizes them.
Yeah, it just
Oh
makes me
man.
laugh. It makes me laugh. But how do you feel they played into the story? Obviously, ignoring Krieger and ignoring Phin at the moment, the Tinkerer and Krieger. How do you feel they kind of worked as opposing factions? Because I feel like it was interesting, but at the same time, like you mentioned beforehand, Hunter, I feel like to me, the Underground obviously played a massive role in this game. But Roxon, other than Krieger just acting like, oh, I'm the fucking bad guy, smiley face, like just walking around being an asshole the entire time. Roxon didn't really feel like, except for the bridge scene, which we'll get into in a minute, didn't really feel like they had much of a presence in this game. They were just kind of, we're here, we're the kind of reason for it, but we're just here. That's how they felt to me anyway.
Yeah, they were very much just kind of the motivation for the villain,
Mm-hmm.
the bigger villain that was supposed to be redeemable. They needed the kind of mustache twirly evil type of deal to
They needed your generic
have you
evil to make
sympathize with them.
the gray kind of the other villain that's kind of gray, morally gray, that kind of thing, to be like make her out to be, oh, she's redeemable where Krieger isn't, which I find funny because I'm like, to be fair, Krieger's crime is he had a lot of money and could exploit a lot of people necessarily. It was just like Because he's like, yeah, he's an asshole, but at the same time, he was just your typical businessman in a video game. He's like, there's nothing special about Krieger that made what he was doing like anything really. It was more of the people
Yeah.
around him. Let's talk about the two main the other two set pieces that I can think of. Let's talk about those real quick before we get into character specifics. Obviously the first one's the bridge scene and the second one is the chase scene, is the two that I like to consider. Other than the ending. Obviously the ending's a big set piece as well, which we'll talk about in its own right, because I really like the endings of this game, spoiler alert. But how do you think about the bridge scene? Because I was surprised at how early that came, because I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting this early, especially from watching the trailers. I was like, oh look, Tinker's here, new forms out. I'm like, oh, this must be near the end of the game, and it's genuinely like Peter's gone an hour, and it's like bridge time.
Yeah.
Because you obviously have you have Ria, yeah, you obviously have Rio's rally that she's doing on Christmas Day, which I find extremely funny. Is like,
Or was it Christmas Eve?
well, I thought they had a Christmas Eve meal. That's what I thought.
Oh,
The meal
yeah, you're right,
before
you're right,
Christmas
you're
Eve
right.
with Finn and all of them,
And
and
they
then
had
the
the
day
Christmas
after
Day
was
rally.
Christmas Day, and I was like, that's a bit of a
Yeah,
weird
that
day
was
to have
weird.
a rally. Like, who has a
Yeah.
rally on Christmas Day?
For
that,
seemingly
like,
days after,
election?
people kept talking about it as if Christmas was still like happening and or
Yeah.
coming up. So the timeline there is nebulous.
Yeah, and then also, like, who's having elections between Christmas and New Year's? Like,
I guess it's for the January elections. That's my guess. Is they're just
who
doing.
has? Are there January?
There are
I mean,
there
I
are some
guess.
places that are for stuff like she's doing. I think there are like January elections and stuff, but who
All
knows?
right.
World of Spider-Man, who knows? But what did you think of the bridge scene as a whole, as a set piece? Because I think my greatest comparison to that scene is that's very much the helicopter
The
scene from
crane.
the first game. Yeah, the helicopter crane scene from the first game, where you're like, oh, that's a cool trailer piece, and it's like, oh, it's kind of cool that it's happening, but at the same time, I was like, it's fine. I was like,
Yeah,
it's
Yeah,
all
it's
right.
all right.
yeah. That's kind of their thing. They like to have that big set piece that is less interactive than most of the rest of the game, but it looks really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, let's just shoot a whole bunch of stuff with webs.
Mhm.
Smash
about
R1
it.
L1. Move somewhere else. Do it again.
Yeah,
It felt good in the moment, you know.
because that was my thing. Is my problem with one of my few problems with this game is the set pieces to me were just fine. Like in the first Spider-Man, I was like, oh, they kind of like, oh, this is fucking cool, because we hadn't really seen that kind of stuff before. Because the biggest similarity that you can give to the Spider-Man games, which is unfair, but it's the Arkham games, right? They very much took a lot. They took a lot of insight from the Arkham games and made them what I think is a better experience at times. But the set pieces were new and unique because Batman didn't do set pieces really. They were
No.
very few and far between. And if they were a cutscene, not like something you interacted with. But then, so yeah, to have the bridge scene, which just felt very samey, and then the Tinkerer chase scene, which I was like, oh, this would be cool. But I don't know if you guys noticed it. If you went like 2 centimeters off the fucking beaten path, the game just went fucking slapped you on the wrist and went, you fucking what? What are you doing? Back to the
Are
fucking
you
start.
leaving the
Yeah.
mission area? Would you
Yeah.
like
Oh,
to
yeah.
try? Would you like to quit the mission?
Yeah, because
Abort mission?
I noticed.
No.
Because I noticed there's a part where she goes around a corner of the building, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll just go the other way around and catch up to her quicker. And the game was like, slap on the wrist, you fucking idiot! No, you went out of the mission radius. Tinkerer escaped. I was like, if anything, I'm being quicker. This is bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
it was just kind of funny.
I forget if the first game was that rigid about that when you were chasing down Shocker or
I don't know.
whatever.
No, because you actually brought up my other point was it was a reskin of Shocker. I was
Oh
like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that was the other thing I was going to bring up. I was like, not only
Get
that,
here,
but it was
Shocker.
also just a fucking reskin of that side, which was a side quest. They reskinned a side quest. They were like, you're not fooling me. But hey, it was
Yeah,
still
I don't
fun.
know. I didn't have any issues with it, but it was very much. I saw it and I was like, oh yes, the shocker chase sequence again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, right. Is there any other like kind of set piece gameplay moments except for the end that you wanted to talk about? Did you want to have a go at Rhino 2, Hunter? Did you want to?
Oh, the like second boss encounter.
Yeah.
Oh, I really wish it wasn't there. It was
Yeah.
boring. It's the same old superhero has big man who charges at you and you got to dodge them so they run into a wall thing that I feel like they've been doing for over a decade
Yeah,
now.
it's the Bane fight from Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
Again, it's like, how many times are we going to do this boss fight where it's you need to jump out of the way? Like that's the same. It's the
Yeah.
same. It's genuinely the Bane fight, which just makes me
And
laugh.
then there were henchmen and other annoying
Yeah.
distractions, and I'm never a fan of boss fights with henchmen.
I thought it was a boring fight, and then I did it on ultimate difficulty, and I was getting one shot, and I was like, "Well, it's still boring," but now I just can't.
It's boring, but faster.
I die faster.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just like, it's kind of lackluster as well. It just
I also
kinda-
felt like it dragged on a lot. I'm like, how many times do I have to electric punch this man before he stops?
Well,
Oh
you're
yeah,
trying to
it
break
did.
the armor off him.
Yeah,
He's got the magic venom resistant armor.
My favorite part was like, oh, you punch him in the face and his leg armor falls off. I'm like, great, you know, like the game's just like I kept punching him in the face and I'm like, I removed his face armor first. He should be dead now because I've just punched him in the face repeatedly with my shock, but apparently his leg armor's still saving him. I'm like, how does this work? Like, it was
Oh
kind of
man,
funny.
they're saving the
Yeah.
dismemberment physics for the sequel.
Oh boy,
I don't know. I found most of the fights overall pretty easy though, even on ultimate difficulty, just because like with the venom punch, you're able to re-stun them, and so you're able to like get some hits in, stun with the venom punch, get more hits in, do a finisher, get more hits in, do a venom punch again,
yeah.
and the final boss fight on ultimate difficulty, I killed single cycle. Yeah, it's too easy.
Yeah, my main problem with the Miles gameplay is Miles is really fun to play and I love the gameplay, but he's way too easy. It feels like you're far too overpowered way too much, like far too often. It feels like
Yeah.
I feel like you like, and it's going to suck when Spider-Man 2 comes around and they're like, how do we make this feel more satisfying like it feels like it needs a balance work because Venom just feels like you get it way too quickly and it feels way too fucking busted where it's like you can venom punch someone, and while you are dealing the finishing damage to that character who's electrified, you're building up more fucking venom, so then you can just go and venom punch someone else straight away.
Or you venom punch someone and then you throw them at someone else who
Yeah,
then is electrified, and you then throw that person at someone else, and you've now stunned the entire field.
yeah. Or my
Or even
favorite, yeah,
better, you
the
just throw them
L1X.
off the building.
Yeah, or the L1X, like the surge wave, where it just shocks everyone
Oh, yeah.
around you, and then you can
Oh
just,
yeah.
literally, you could literally just
My favorite
L1X.
thing to do with the Venom powers would be to, when it'd be like, oh, look at that group of people doing shady business over there. I'd always love to be like, position myself above them and just do a dropping like Venom
Yeah.
fist
It was
off of a building or something. It's my favorite.
God,
In
yeah.
for the ultimate difficulty, you have to beat the game to unlock it. So I did it on New Game Plus. In New Game Plus, you unlock an ability where if you die, instead of dying, you do one of those moves and you get a full health bar.
That's
You're allowed to do it once per fight. So there were times where it was faster just to take the L and everyone dies except you.
That's amazing.
But no, that's like my main criticism of this game is I really love the story, but especially going back to the other the original Spider-Man, which I still think is not a difficult game. It's not a hard video game in the slightest. But it was just when I'm playing as regular Peter, I'm like, man, I really don't want to play as Peter in Spider-Man 2 because his moveset is so much slower just because of how broken Miles is. Because it's just like that they're either gonna have to add they're gonna have to add a new moveset for Peter to make him feel fresh, or just nerf fucking Miles to the ground.
The thing is, you have the other things like the web blossom and stuff like that in the original Spider-Man that and are all very situational. While the Venom power is just the fighting technique, right? Like you go, but you can also go fast in air. So if you're trying to go fast, you do the Venom dash in the air. You go faster there too. Like it's just yeah. I compared it in the other cast to Funky mode in Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, where he's just obviously the better character and everyone else is obsolete.
I was gonna do show and tell, but my Christmas tree's in the way of my Switch games. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like when you mentioned Web Blossom, I forgot that suit power gimmick was a thing. When I went back, I'm like, oh yeah, Peter had all these weird things that you could do. But going back, if I do prefer Venom as a system because I just felt that those, especially Web Blossom, was just one of those things where it's just, oh, here's the win button. And when I say win button, it means I don't have to press a thing after I've activated this because the thing just sorts itself out. I much prefer the Venom powers because even though they're broken and overpowered, you at least have to input and you feel like you're doing something. So I guess that's something to mention. With game, have you got anything else gameplay wise you want to talk? I think we've covered most of it, but if you have something.
I mean, if you want me to talk about like the challenges and the other little collectibles
Yeah, go
and
for
stuff
it.
like that, yeah, I mean, I like the challenges and the screwball challenges and everything. I kind of optimized ILs for all of those in the original, so I did that the same here.
YouTube.com/KNFPacky.
And as always, the stealth challenges are the best. None of the suit mods were different this time. So in the original game, there's 2 suit mods that can make you go faster.
Okay.
And so technically, Miles does move slower than uh, Peter,
Mhm.
but it's not very important. All the challenges were pretty bland. The speed challenges, the stealth challenges were the interesting ones because you got different gadgets this time, and
Mhm.
so it kind of varied the fights. But ultimately, you just gravity well in the air and just suck people into oblivion
Yeah.
because that works.
Yeah.
So once you know how to break the game, this game is just not very balanced by
Mhm.
comparison. But
Yeah, my main thing with the challenges was I did all the challenges on Ultimate. I got all the Ultimates this time around. I didn't do that in the original. Um,
the ultimate actually made the challenge requirements harder too. Was one thing
oh,
I found out.
okay, cool. I did all the Ultimates on it, and I was like, oh, this is fun. The only one I didn't have fun on was the fucking swingy one. That one sucked, dude, where you're sitting on the rooftop and you gotta swing the thing
Oh,
around.
so once you
Fucking
beat it once,
sucks.
you unlock the ability to mash triangle to spin more times, and I got like 90
Yeah,
on that.
but on the original version, it sucked. It was so shit. It was that bad that
Yeah.
I just gave up, and then eventually I watched a YouTube video, so I was like, "Oh, by the way, you can cancel out of it. So you can do a
Yeah.
spin and then cancel instead of throwing it." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, that
And
now
then once
makes
you
it
unlock the
doable."
triple, you just hoop, 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 cancel, grab the item again, hoop, 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 hoop.
Yeah, but that was just that one challenge was a bit. One thing I do like the whole idea of the Peter holograms though. I liked that.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
It's a good little bit of lore there for
yeah,
like an in context reason.
Yeah. The
I
only
just
one
love
I
how
didn't
nerdy.
actually like
Go on.
was the one where you had to kill the enemies in the air
Oh yeah, yeah,
because the ultimate difficulty actually made it like insanely difficult to do because the enemies just didn't die, but you
yeah.
could go to easy and just like oh punch
Sort
punch punch dead dead dead.
Yeah, yeah, but no. I did like the I just loved how it just shows how much of a like a sad, lonely person Peter is at times with his little just the amount of stuff that he did for those challenges, and you could just picture Peter in his fucking room sorting this out, where he has like the Metal
Oh, that's
Gear
so
noises when
funny.
you get caught, and he has the thank you Spider-Man for saving me and stuff like that. Like
Did you do the pigeon mission?
yeah, and the Return of the
Yeah,
Pigeons,
pigeon
the Return of
And
the
you got
Pigeons.
Oh, I was so
the
upset.
pigeon dialogues?
Yeah, pigeon fact number 3.
Oh,
Oh yeah, the pigeon facts were great. That made me laugh.
It just constantly reminds me that Yuri was perfect casting for Spider-Man. Like honestly,
It
just
really
like
was.
they looked out because it's like, oh man, even though Peter is hardly in the game, and there's the controversy with his face, which I am still on the side of. I hated the old face as well.
yeah.
Can we
I
just
think
get
it's an
on with it?
improvement.
I think it's an improvement too because his old face was fucking weird. He always looked like
Yeah.
he was confused during all times. People are like, it doesn't like look at this new face. It doesn't show as much emotion. I'm like, old Peter just showed confusion because he just always had his fucking eyebrows askew the entire time and just kind of always looked shocked. I was like, I just kind of I've grown used to new Peter now. I kind of like new Peter a lot more. It looks more like Yuri, which is what they were going for. So I don't see the problem. People asking to change it back, I think, are just being a bit too fucking. Well, it's fucking fans on the internet. What's new, right? Um, but
Another thing,
go.
did you unlock the cat?
I did unlock the bodega card, dude.
Yeah.
I hardly could use it though because I was basically done with the game by the time
Yeah,
I used it. I was like,
Yeah.
New Game Plus, I did the whole run with the cat, and I was just like cat finishing everything. It was
yeah.
great.
Oh, that's awesome.
I did think it was. I did like it though. I loved the mission as well. I just love it. It's so Spider-Man because it's just so stupid. Where it's like my cat Spider-Man's gone, and you just gotta go and find him, and he's in an electric plant, and the fucking big brutes and just holding him, and then he's like,
There's
"You're not
3 rooms of bad guys
yeah,
trying to break into this
yeah,
electric
yeah."
supply station
And
or whatever.
and the only reason you're there is because the big guy fucking stole the cat and stuck him in his
Yeah.
bag. It's just like,
I forget his name, but I remember like when you were sneaking in, it was like I bet it was this guy's fault, whatever his name was, and then
yeah.
later I'm like, oh, it is this guy's fault. That's funny.
Yeah, I did. It was quite good, but no, I did like Spider Cat quite a bit. It was quite funny, to be honest. I already had it spoiled though, so I was kind of just like, oh, I wonder when I get
Well, it
Spider
was
Cat.
in one of the
It
reveal
was in one of the
things.
It's
trailers,
weird that they
and that's
revealed
when
like
I
the complete like that. It was weird that they were basically showed off the Speed the Game skin in the trailers because I'm like, that's a bit weird. I thought that you were gonna get that super early, but hey, there
yeah.
you go. With all the gameplay stuff out of the way, I guess it's time to talk about those pesky things called characters. I'm gonna start off with the fam as I've put it here. So Miles, Genki, and Rio are the three that I think we should start with. Let's start with Miles. How does everyone feel about Miles? Because I still think that Naji Jetta, who plays Miles, is a fucking great casting. Especially in this game, I feel like fucking great. I really liked Miles in this game quite a bit. What about you, Hunter? I'll throw it to you.
I agree. I think Miles did a really good job at portraying like that. Oh, I'm trying to get used to this, but then in the moments where it matters, and he had to, be Spider-Man, you
Mm-hmm.
know, he rose to the occasion. He did a good job at portraying that.
Because I feel like with the suit scene, I love how stupid the suit scene is. Because with Peter, it made sense. He was in Otto's lab. Otto sends him the fucking. He's like, "White Spider, I've got a couple of ideas for you." And it's like Peter's like, "Oh, nice," and he uses it. And then you just got Miles in his bedroom with Genki. Somehow makes this sick fucking black suit with the red fucking things. I'm like, how did they make this in his room?
Yeah, that was one thing. Like, so many times where Genki's involved, I'm like, this kid's like 16, 17
Yeah,
in
they're both
high
17. Yeah.
school. Like,
And he
I'm
like
not sure I'd buy
publicly
it, but
knows the other Spider-Man
like
too.
he's hacking the Spider-Man suit at 17,
Yeah.
just casually.
Especially because Peter's supposed to be a genius. So
Right.
the fact that there's like I like Genki as well. Genki's quite, to be honest. When I went back to Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man in the remaster, and it's just the police comms going all units. There's a crime going on here, or you hear police chatter about a side quest or whatever. Like I like Yuri and Peter's dynamic in the original,
Oh yeah, I like
but
Yuri.
man, I really liked having this guy, like man in the chair behind the scenes as Ganke, being like, "Oh, I'm here. This stuff's going on." And the app was, oh my god, the fucking app!
Oh, so much better. Just
What a
Crime
fucking
on Demand.
memory. Bring that fucking back, please, for the love of God. It's so much better being able to just go, "Okay, I need to do this crime. Ping it for me, Genki," instead of waiting 25 minutes for it to show up or to have all the
And then you
side quests
don't have to do 5 in each section of the map, but then you also have to complete each one of them 100%,
yeah.
but it's random where they're going to show up.
Or yeah, but if you're going for the 100% completion, you can just trigger it and get it done. Like that's
Yeah.
great. I fucking love that. Um, I really liked Genki as a backing character as well. I think it works really well, the dynamic between them. I feel like it's a great difference between Peter and Miles is Miles having at least Genki right at the start. We'll get into the ending, but Miles having these people that know he's Spider-Man, so he has these people that are watching out for him that have his back. Because Peter always feels like he's alone, other than like MJ. Even Yuri doesn't know who Spider-Man is, right? So other than MJ and now Miles, he's got no one, and he just always feels alone. Whereas Miles, he just constantly feels like, oh, he's got Genki, and then he's got his community behind him and all that. Where it just kind of feels like, oh, it just feels like it's a nice dynamic. So yeah, I really liked Genki, and I was really surprised to say I really liked fucking Rio as well. Miles's mum, I was like, I really like this character and what they're doing with it. I'm like, I kind of interested in seeing how they carry on with this character because, especially in the ending. well, not even in the ending, in the midpoint of the game when she finds out that he's Spider-Man. I was just like, that's really cool not having this fucking Peter again, where up until Aunt May's deathbed, he's just like, oh yeah, I'm hiding this. And he's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm Spider-Man. And she's like, I've known for fucking years. Why haven't
You
you
idiot.
told me? So I just kind of liked that they got that all out of the way, where it's like, oh, his mum knows,
Yeah.
Genki knows, everyone's kind of just chill with it. So I kind of, and just Rio as a character, for those who aren't big into the comics, which I'm not really, but usually it's Rio that dies in most most of Miles' stories. Rio's the one that dies, and it's his father who's alive, and then you always have his father and his uncle on both sides of the coin.
Wow.
The two sides of the coin.
Interesting.
That's what the usual dynamic is. So kind of having Miles's dad dead, and then having his mum there who's supportive of him, and actually knows about it, is kind of an interesting dynamic, especially when his uncle's still out there and is still the other side of the coin. It's going to be an interesting dynamic, and I like it quite a bit. Again, it's just one of those things that makes Insomniac's universe different to everything else, which is what I love.
But the uncle's going to jail for a few years, so
Yeah, but I feel like that's not the end of his story.
he might be like a phone call in, but I don't feel like he's going to be in the next game. Probably,
Yeah,
unless there's another jailbreak. Hey!
Like, all units at the raft. Here we go again.
Yeah.
The Sinister 16.
Well, no, we'll talk about what
jeez.
we're expecting from the end in a little bit later. But no, I just thought the supporting cast, also the people of Harlem. I also really liked the people of Harlem and how they kept going through it throughout the entirety, and they just kept with the same small.
Oh yeah.
I really liked that. It was a nice touch. So instead of helping
Teo and the sign language lady.
Yeah, exactly. I really liked the messaging of he's our Spider-Man. I thought that was a really good way to introduce Miles and to give him his own unique area. Him just being kind of the Spider-Man of Harlem for now is a great way to kind of, especially at the end when they're like, hey, he's our Spider-Man. I fucking love that it's kind of like a community idea. Like, he is the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Peter's all over New York, whereas Miles is so engraved into Harlem, and he's just a part of that community. I really like that as a factor. It was really cool. What wasn't very cool was Krieger. Let's talk about Krieger real quick. Does anyone have anything good to say about Krieger other than he's voiced by Troy Baker?
Not really. Troy Baker performed his role well, as always, but like he definitely had a line where I'm like, oh man, Troy Baker's a treasure. But it wasn't because of the character, it was just because of Troy Baker doing it well. You know?
He's just such a forgettable villain, which is weird because I really like one. We'll get into Phin in a second, right? We'll get into her, but at least in the original Spider-Man, yes, you have the forgettable villains like Rhino and Electro and Vulture, who we didn't mention the Vulture fight in the game, by the way. I really love the fucking Vulture, the little Easter egg. It was a cool little thing to end the
It was a nice
challenges.
drawing, yeah.
I was just like, especially because you have Peter.
And then there's a second one. Actually, it wasn't really two vultures. I was just really tired.
Yeah, it was just fucking Peter pissing about on his fucking AR program was a nice touch. But, obviously, even when you take out the fucking 4 members of the Sinister Six who were fucking pointless in the original Spider-Man and just kind of sat there as nothing but villains just for the sake of it, you at least had Martin Lee, which I thought was a really good villain, and then you at least had that personal connection to Otto that made it feel like it was a big deal what you were going up against, and I really liked that. Whereas Krieger, you don't have that. At least you don't even have the he's a classic villain that everyone's been doing fighting, so there's at least a bit of an attachment. He's just a dick. He's just there, he's just
he's like Norman Osborn, but without any of the things that make Norman Osborn
he was Norman
memorable.
Osborn, but no, Brian Interhall wants Norman Osborn for Spider-Man 2, so you're gonna have B-Tech Norman Osborn here called Simon Krieger, which
except for Krieger didn't even have tech. Like he was a bad guy, but he wasn't a traditional villain. I think is kind of
his problem was he was a dick. He was just a dick that saw lives as expendable and was just in it for the money. That was basically what he was. Like he wasn't necessarily like. I wouldn't say he was like, he's one of the greatest criminals ever. He's not like Kingpin. He's not a mastermind or anything. He's just a dick.
Yeah.
The
He
one
just has money and can buy guns.
the one line, Hunter, that I'll mention it now because we'll probably forget about Krieger when we're talking about the ending, is the fucking my favorite line at the end of the game is him screaming as he's getting arrested, saying it's deep fakes, it's all
That was
fucking
the line
lies.
that made me laugh. I'm like, oh god, Troy's a
Because
treasure.
I was laughing because I was like, to be fair, he's got a point. He could he could actually say that because his role is so insignificant and the stuff that he's done is so fucking like artificial that he probably could get away with saying it's deep fakes and get away with it, to be honest. So I was just like, that's quite funny.
Yeah, and then the end where the entire Roxon, the corporate people turn over their files to put all the guilt on him instead of on the rest of Roxon.
Yeah,
It's like,
that's
I'm not sure I
I
buy
don't know.
that one.
Yeah, I don't know how
Like, they
how
could
that works.
easily have just protected him and he would have gotten off.
Yeah. It was interesting. But no, Krieger to me was just he was there. He was just haha moo haha, I'm big, like, oh, I'm a dick. I'm gonna basically blow up Harlem because I feel like it. Because I don't want the Tinkerer winning is essentially it. Is I'll just give it away.
Yeah.
Um so I guess the other character, the main person to talk about is the Tinkerer, Phin. What did you guys originally think of Phin? Because at the start, when it was revealed that it was Phin, I was like, well, one, I was like, oh, what a shocker! It's another one of these. Spider-Man's villain just turns out to be like one of the closest friends. Like it's always one of those things where it's like, how come Spider-Man is always like, isn't they never take off their mask and Miles is like, oh, I've never seen you before in my life. I don't know who you are. It's always you're my best friend from middle school. Like it's always those personal connections. It just always makes me laugh. But I don't know about you guys, but at least at the start, we'll talk about her in the ending. But at the start, I just thought she was fucking shit, to be honest. Like at the start, at least, I was like, until they gave her a motive and went with it. When it was just, oh, she's the Tinkerer, surprise, and then I was just like, she's kind of just meh until the start. That was my initial impression. I'll let you guys prove me wrong.
It seemed odd to me, like just her entire role in the story every time, because like she's this super villain mastermind engineer, but she's also 17. It goes back to like the Ganke discussion where it's just like he's a little bit too powerful for a 17-year-old that is hacking stuff.
Yeah, especially when the only other proof that you have is like you have the museum scene, which I really liked the museum scene. Hey, the second PlayStation exclusive this year where we're talking about a fucking museum scene. But yeah, I was like, hey, the museum scene's cool and it adds some nice history. I really liked the Peter and Otto little fucking thing that happens. That was really cool when they just like go, oh, excuse me. And then did you guys stay and listen to that conversation, by the way?
Oh yeah,
it's a really cool little conversation that I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat that they added that. But the only example of those two being smart are you have the little like basically what with the backpacks in the original game, you have his little hidden stashes, his whatever he was, which I was like time capsules. Which for Spider-Man and backpacks, I'm like makes sense, especially when they make that funny joke about how he won a prize from Fisk, which was a lifetime supply of backpacks, which he just used then to carry swings. But here, I'm like, really, you two fucking little shits put these time capsules anywhere? One of them on top of a fucking church? Really? You did that? Did you really? I don't know about that. Especially when Miles was scared of heights beforehand, they make a reference to that. I'm like, that's bait.
And then there's one that's like in like a clogged pipe or something.
Yeah, one's in a clogged pipe. I'm like, really? They didn't think to drain that pipe once in the fucking 5 years? No, okay.
Yeah.
But other than those like anecdotes that you see, and then other than them solving how to open a door to get into an elevator, you don't really see like the smart side of them. Like,
hey man, it was a fancy door.
It was a fancy door, but at the same time, I'm like, at least with Genki, I'm like, oh, he's a computer. He's like a tech nerd. That's where his smarts are. Whereas Finn's like, I've created programmable matter. I'm like, that's a bit of a stretch, you know? Like, I'll accept being a hacker kid. I won't accept fucking being able to make programmable matter that can transform into any weapon. I'm like, that's a bit fucking far-fetched. But at first with Finn, I was like, she's a bit forgettable. But once the whole brother thing comes into it, one, I was like, cliched way to go, mate. His fucking brother just fucking basically evaporating I was like, that was quite funny. I was like, I'm supposed to feel sad here, aren't I? But I was just kind of like, that's cliche superhero movie watching found footage of someone just get like fucking eviscerated by technology. It's like that's straight out.
Oh, that don't get me started on that entire scene. If you thought I was petty about the rope, the most unbelievable part of that scene is there's this phone that fell out of her pocket through a spinning fan blade 20 feet onto steel or concrete, and the screen's not cracked.
They just don't build them like they used to, Kane. They just don't build them.
Dude,
Like they
that screen should have been completely shattered. You shouldn't have there was no way he was getting down there. How many months later? How is it still sending out signal in the middle of this bunker
Yeah, it should have
that
ran
they
out of
can find
charge.
it?
It should have run out
Like,
of
it
charge.
should have been dead. He charged it. I'll give him that.
Oh,
but
okay.
the screen
But how
should have
was
been
it given
tried.
yeah, but how was it given a signal if it was dead?
Exactly.
Oh,
The
God.
phone was programmable matter.
That I was so I was like, all right, this
Imagine.
screen better be cracked, and then it's not cracked, and then he watches it, and then he destroys the phone, being an idiot. And I was just like, oh my
You love to see it. You love to see it, but no. Finn, I was like, oh, I kind of see it. And then when we get to the ending, I was kind of, oh, this is a cool kind of. It was one of those things where you know that they couldn't do a big villain. They just couldn't. Especially for Miles'
they
first time.
budgeted their villains
Yeah.
for sure.
Especially if they want to do a Spider-Man 2. So to me, it was like, Finn at first, I was like, it's a bit lame. And then when you see the underground, when you just see that they're just a bunch of edgelords, when you go into their base and they're just all edgelords, where they're like, we're collecting the masks of other gangs, and look, we drew a mustache on William Fisk's portrait, dude, because we're fucking hardcore. Now let's go do some parkour down in the basement, am I right? It's like, no, get out. This is so lame. And then, but when you get to the end and you see what's happening, I'm like, oh, especially the ending scene, which we'll talk about later. I was like, oh, it makes sense, and I kind of liked her in a way as a villain at the end. The only thing that fucking annoyed me was when she wouldn't listen. That was so annoying. Where it's
Oh
like,
yeah,
this whole scenario could have been fixed with just Miles going, just shut the fuck up for 2 seconds. He's programmed it to detonate as soon as you touch it. Like, literally, that's all he had to say was, he's fucking changed it. Like, that's all he needed to say. But she's like, I'm not listening to you anymore because I'm had enough, and walks away. I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah, plot got a plot, and it's
Yeah.
unfortunate when that makes the characters act like idiots.
Yeah.
I don't know. The whole development of her character, just in the timeline. Like I accept the fact that they were given a 4-week window of the game to exist
Yeah.
instead of shoehorn history in, but still, so in middle school they were friends, and then they drifted apart for I guess a year or two in high school.
Yeah.
And she went from just ordinary middle schooler, her brother, who's kind of her,
What's his name? Rick?
I believe so.
yeah. So Rick dies, who's kind of taking care of her. So now she's on her own, and so then she goes full supervillain, and that
It's kind of a
confused
weird
me.
thing to kind of go, oh, instead of being like, oh, I'm just gonna
I
become a
mean-
fucking edgelord now.
She was there to witness it, and apparently was able to do
How
something
the fuck
about
did she
it.
get out? That's another thing. I'm like, how the fuck
I
did
don't
Krieger
know.
let her
But she
escape?
left her phone. Yeah, that was the exchange.
Ah, yes. He's like, no, don't follow the girl. We have her phone down in a fucking tunnel. There we go. She'll know. There we go. We're free. Like, it was weird. It was weird. I guess the only other
Yeah.
character to talk about before we talk about the ending itself was the Prowler himself. A character which the only 2 Miles things I've really seen, which is this and Enter the Spider-Verse, have both explored this character fucking in depth already. It's kind of weird how I guess he is integral to Miles's at least development as a character, being like having this dark, because like I say, he's the yin and yang when his father's head high up in the police ranks and is obviously this symbol of like good in his family, to have his uncle be this criminal mass thief who did, and they had that falling out. Obviously they need that kind of balance, and I thought he was super interesting. It's one of those things where his fight was okay, I guess. All right,
Yeah, the fight was.
I just comboed him
Yeah.
to death.
Yeah, it
pretty
was super
quickly.
easy. He felt barely stronger than one of the brutes, really.
No, he had an interesting
He just
fight, but
had more help.
I liked that dynamic, but at the same time, he just kind of felt a bit like, oh, I'm here. Like the whole, I liked the infiltration mission that you did with him to get the phone. I did kind of like that whole idea of him watching over you and being like judging your every move and stuff like that. I thought that was kind of cool. And then having him have that interesting twist, which no, everyone saw coming, was, oh, he's the one that was ratting out what Miles has been doing to try and protect him. Like, obviously, I
Yeah.
thought that was an interesting scene to be like, leave the kid alone. I was also like, that's just fucking stupid, because now Krieger knows it's a personal matter, so it's only a matter of time before Krieger works out who the fuck the other Spider-Man is.
I thought the way that they pushed before they outright introduced him, the details of him into place were interesting. Like the Prowler's case file was in his dad's old stuff, and I was like, oh. And then they mentioned his uncle a little bit later. I'm like, oh, cool.
As soon as I saw the Prowler case file, I'm like, oh, we're doing this, are we? And then as soon as his uncle's the first person to use the spider app, I'm like, yeah, we're
That
doing this, aren't we?
that whole thing was odd to me until I found out he was the Prowler, because it's like, why's this random guy from the subway
Yeah.
who's
Oh, you didn't.
just trying to work the electronics being like, I think someone across town is tampering with the signal. It's like, I don't know why a random subway guy would know that.
Yeah, no.
Oh, he's the Prowler, and okay, fair enough.
But again, I really liked listening to his backstory and hearing how he fell out with his brother and stuff like that. Also, I kind of liked the purple suit. I was like, that's kind of cool that he's made him a suit. That was like, that's pretty cool having like a Prowler suit for Miles. I was like, but no, I liked his inclusion quite a bit. I just, again, it just feels like they were trying their hardest to be like, look at all these people we have in our game. But then the thing is, it's the same problem that they had with the Act 3 of the original, where it's like, if you add too many characters in, then everyone's going to start feeling left out a lot. So it's like Krieger feels like he's hardly invested. The Prowler, even though he is in integral parts of the game, he does kind of just feel like he's there. Like, he's not really making a massive impact. He's just there. Especially, like, and then there's the cool scene at the end where he comes out, he's like, I'm gonna help you. You go deal with the Tinkerer while I help the people out in my purple suit. I'm like, okay, I see how this is going. But no, I kind of liked him quite a bit. Right, let's wrap this up with the ending, boys.
Right.
What did you think about the final scene, I guess? Let's talk about the boss fight first, Kay, and you can start because you always seem to love talking about gameplay. What was your thought on
Oh,
the final boss fight?
I mean, it was another enemy that you just comboed
Was
to
it?
death, and there's 2 stages, so you had to, combo and then wait and
Here's
then
my question
combo.
to you: better or worse fight than Doc Ock as a final boss? Because
I don't
here's my
I
thing.
don't know that it was worse.
You have cool. No, I think it's better because
Yeah, I know.
you have cool scenes with Doc Ock where it's like, oh, you're running up the building. And you have this fight where you're fighting on a fucking side of a building, which is really cool. But it was so kind of just like forced, where it was like you have limited movement, you can hardly do anything. It kind of feels. Whereas this, I kind of thought, oh, it at least feels like a test of my powers as as I've grown
Yeah.
playing as Miles.
I think the Dog Ock fight is probably aesthetically better, but
Oh,
mechanically worse.
I agree.
While this fight is kind of more open form,
Hmm.
so you can do what you want, but the fight itself is a little bit more bland. Because I mean, like all the fights in this game are uh, very abusable by the Venom Powers. So
Hmm.
there was you find your way of defeating something, and you just do that over and over and over and over, and
Yeah.
the bosses just have more health.
What did you think, Hunter?
I thought it was well, and I like it more than the Doc Ock fight because Doc Ock was like more of a spectacle, clearly,
Which is a
but
cool
you know,
spectacle, by the way. I still
it
love
was a
that
cool
too.
spectacle and it was a serviceable final battle. I didn't
Mhm.
hate Doc Ock by any stretch of the imagination, but being able to actually, just I prefer fights that are final test of your skill,
Like this
even if
one,
it
yeah.
wasn't really a final test of skill because it was just the same thing with more HP. But
It was pretty easy. It was a bit spammy. That was my main problem. Was you got to the end and it's like massive spinny wheels of death, turrets everywhere, snipe you, fucking dodge all this shit until I give you an opening. I'm like, hurry up, like come on. It was interesting though. I did like quite a bit. What did you think of the final scene? because I think it's an interesting. I actually quite like the final scene quite a bit. The final moments of this fight, one, can I just say that was a fan moment. I rarely go, oh fuck, but the moment where Miles puts his fucking arms on the generator and you realize that that was the first fucking thing that you saw of this game in the trailer, and my mind was like, I forgot that that scene was in the trailer. So as soon as he does that and you just see the suit tearing off him, I was like, that's fucking sick how they did that. I love the fact that they showed the final moments of the game and just got away with it. No one really ever was like, oh yeah, that's probably the end of the game. Like I just thought that they just made that scene for the fucking trailer. To be honest, I was like, oh, that's super cool. Where you just see the fucking suit tear off, like fucking erode off him. I thought that was fucking cool.
Yeah, it was really good.
But then I thought the other moment where he was about to burst, and then I think the Phin sacrifice makes sense because you don't want a villain out there knowing your identity. That's why I think it's going to be super interesting with Peter coming forward, because obviously you have Dark Ark, who knows who Spider-Man is, which I think is going to be interesting because Ark is one of those characters where I'm like, he could use that he could be a real fucking
But
dick
he's
and use that.
also
But he's also
got
got that personal
a
relationship
little
where,
fried now.
yeah.
He's also known that for a while, if you remember.
Yeah, he did know it
Like
for
he knew that before, so
he did know it, which I always love. I always love going back to that fucking scene where he's like, "You're Spider-Man's suit crafter," and then like everyone laughs and everyone just goes along with it because they're like, "Oh yeah, he's just an idiot," and then no one ever thinks, "Oh, he's lying for Peter." Everyone just goes, "Doc Ock, you're so you're so fucking stupid." Like,
That was one of those moments where I was like, I don't know if this is just like cartoonish
from the beginning, I was like, I
comic
don't
book
know if I buy
plot.
this.
yeah.
You're clearly going to be the bad guy at the end of this game.
Yeah, but he wasn't. That's the thing with Ark is Ark isn't a bad guy, and he doesn't have bad intentions. It's his
Well, yeah,
technology corrupts him in a way
I
that
was
he
using
yeah.
bad guy loosely
Because when
there. I was like,
when he designs Peter's suit, he does it with like good intentions, and then
Well, the whole point of like the prosthetics was because he himself is handicapped.
yeah, because and he's losing control of his own. That's his problem. So he was trying, yeah. So that's the thing with Doc is I was like, oh, and with Finn, I'm just like, yeah, but if Finn gets arrested, I can easily see Finn just being a fucking dick and just
It,
telling everyone
I,
it's
I,
just
w-
a hissy fit.
I did think it could have been interesting is like if he didn't have to like if she didn't get sacrificed
Mm.
and like she just kind of you know goes her separate way at the end, doesn't get arrested. Like that could have been like an interesting loose end, but
What a way to go though. Being fucking
yeah,
exploded in a ball of I was like, that was fucking
that
sick.
was
I was like,
crazy.
whoever came up with that as an idea, fair play, because that was like straight out of a movie with just like having I mean, it was obvious. It was a bit fucking campy with she turns on her fucking super shoes and off she fucking bounces up into the fucking atmosphere.
I mean, yeah, but it was like suitably like
Yeah,
comic book wacky, not like anything world
I
breaking. I
know.
thought it was a good scene altogether, and her dying was a suitable consequence for
It
becoming
shows
a
Miles
criminal
that, yeah,
mastermind.
especially because Peter's loss with Uncle Ben is very much just as he's become Spider-Man. So like, and most of the time it's Peter being a dick with his powers, which causes Ben to fucking go, right? And usually that's where the great power, great responsibility hits home because he's like, I could have done something. Whereas Miles with his dad, Miles couldn't have done anything in that situation. This is finally the situation where he's like, oh shit, someone died. And it was like, I couldn't save them. Like it was, even though it's not technically his fault, she chose to do that. And it was her fucking choice to sacrifice herself so everyone else could survive. But it's still one of those things that Miles is going to have to live with going, I can't save everyone. Like that's just something that's going to happen. So I thought it was interesting. I also thought it was interesting. It was like, I love the scene with the bit of audio if you start swinging around after you finish the game, where you have Miles talk to his mum about the whole situation.
Oh yeah, that was real good.
I thought that was a really good way because I was thinking because I was like, are they really going to do this? Let's forget all the bad shit she's done for a second. Like they're just going to be like, she's a fucking hero. She saved the day. I was like, no, they actually do. Where Miles is like torn. He's like, she was basically a sister to me, but what she did was wrong, even though she sacrificed herself. And then Rio has that really nice line, which I'm not going to try and fucking butcher right now, but she had a really nice line, which I really liked. Um, We didn't mention it. I fucking love Peter's reaction to the suit. I fucking love that.
Oh yeah,
The fact that he's like, the fact that he's jealous of Miles's suit. I fucking love the fact that he's like, I can't believe that suit's so
I
good.
mean, rightfully so. It's the cooler looking suit.
I'd look at that and go, shit. Why didn't I think of black and red? Why did I go with fucking red and blue?
Well, that's when Peter just needs to whip out one of his alternate suits and be like,
Oh yeah, he does
"Oh,
have
dude."
like the black cat suit.
Yeah,
that
he has a load of like
is the
stealth
same
suits. Yeah,
color scheme.
but I just love that scene.
But
where
he doesn't have the cat suit with like a cat
Mhm.
on a backpack on his back.
He does
That's
not.
the winning suit.
That is the winning
Yeah.
combo.
I just drank funny. Oh god, I'll live.
Oh, no.
I'll live. It's the sacrifices of podcasting, ladies and gentlemen.
Making
Yeah.
like Miles the first time he tried to do the upside down drinking thing.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Exactly. I guess finally, the final thing to talk about with the ending scene is, how did you feel to the end of Miles lying in the crater? I fucking love that scene, by the way. Like that's my favorite scene in the entire game is Miles with his mask off, fucking lying there in the crater, and having all the people that you've helped throughout the game come to you and then all decide to keep it a secret. I fucking love. I love that idea. It's so
It's
good.
like the classic Spider-Man scene that like the Raimi trilogy really loved, where the people of New York will help him or whatever.
I think it's better than that
And
scene,
then,
to be honest.
yeah, and then it's like even more earned because you've been going throughout this game and helping these people, so you feel it more.
It's one of those few times in a game where you feel like it's an actual, like you feel like it's a justified, like, oh yeah, he's earned that, like he's earned the respect from these people. Like this is like, it doesn't feel like, oh, that feels kind of forced, where they're all just like, by the good of all nature, we're just not gonna tell anyone. To have like it be those people and just have that like earned moment, I really like. I also, again, I just like the idea of having people know Miles is Spider-Man and just being like, I'm not fucking telling you shit. Like, I like having people looking out for him, I guess, is a good way to do it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun notion. Be like,
Yeah.
I'm never telling you anything. I'll take this to the grave.
Yeah. And just the fucking, he's our Spider-Man. Yeah, just the he's our Spider-Man line I fucking love, which is great. Also, I don't know, you can probably hear this on podcast services. If you can hear the rain, I'm sorry, it's really loud in my room. I've only just noticed it's like freaking really heavily raining. So, however long that's been going, sorry, hope you like ASMR. To end then, guys, let's talk about the future. Obviously, spoiler alert, this isn't the last Spider-Man game. Hate to break it to you, guys. Hate to break it to you, but in 2 to 3 years, we're probably going to be sitting here again, discussing what's next. You know what? Hunter, you tell me what did you think of the post-credit scenes, and what do you think lies in store for Spider-Man next? I'm going to go close this window because it's really freaking loud. So you go for it.
All right, so the post-credit scene was basically like a continuation of the post-credit scene from the
I'm gonna
2018 game, if I'm remembering correctly.
Can I ask you? Can I ask you both a question? Did you notice who the other scientist was?
Yes.
I forget.
It was Kurt.
Blizzard
It was
game.
Kurt Connors.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
All right, I remember now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think's interesting because
That was...
at first you're like, oh, cool, that means Liz is going to get his origin story. No, because in Spider-Man 1, there is backpack-related stuff talking about how he's already transformed into the lizard, which is interesting because that means we've already got this little group of fucking villains coming together, because technically, if you're thinking about it, we've got Green Goblin, Harry, who you assume is going to be Venom, and...
Well, the symbiote doesn't necessarily mean Harry's gonna be Venom. Like,
I think
probably.
I think there's two ways this goes down. The first one is we have a classic symbiote attaches to Peter thing, and Miles is gonna have to sort it out, which I don't really want to see, because I think I've seen enough of fucking the Venom symbiote going to Peter and him becoming an edgelord. I think I've seen enough of that in my time. And the second one, which I think is the more interesting take, which I hope they do, is instead of Harry being Goblin, having Harry become Venom, which I think is a much more interesting and a much more Insomniac thing to do, to be honest.
Yeah.
They've chosen to do with Tinkerer. Tinkerer's usually an old fucking man who's just a boring ass character, and they decided to turn him into
makes people weapons, yeah.
And then they turned him into a teenage
17-year-old
girl, 17-year-old girl who's fucking active as shit and can transmodify fucking anything into weapons, which I thought was a cool take. So I really hope that they do they've teased Harry with the symbiote twice now, to the point where I'm like, I feel like they're gonna make people are gonna be disappointed if Harry isn't Venom at this fucking stage. Like,
I don't know how it would happen, but I would imagine that there might still be a short bit of Peter getting like stuck with the symbiote, but Harry kind of slotting in that Eddie Brock kind of character that, you know, is Venom as we know him, harassing Peter forever.
yeah, I just when they reminded you of that scene, like when they show that scene again, I'm like, oh fuck, I did forget about this happening. I forgot that this was the bigger picture with when you see Osborn come back in. I'm like, Osborn's a weird character because he hardly showed up in the first game. He's there, but there's no real signs of him being insane or sinister yet. So
Yeah, it's
The
interesting.
whole Harry situation has just been odd. Because like you get the backstory in Spider-Man 1 where he went away.
he's sick. Yeah.
Right. And so he went away. And so like he just kind of got written out of the plot at some point before the story started. And now he's just sealed in this. And so then it's like he's
And
gonna come out of this,
wake me
but
up. Yeah, wake him up. So they're waking
he's
him up.
gonna wake up. So he's basically just waking up from that point in history where him and Peter were obviously still friends, but then he's got this other thing that's attached to him, and it's like what is he as a character gonna be like? And what's the effect of the symbiote being
How did
integrated
Norman
into
get
him?
the symbiote? What? Why? Why does he think the symbiote will help? It's one of those interesting things, and I wonder if it's going to be a story of how Harry, obviously with the symbiote, and that's going to cause problems. Is that's what going to trigger fucking Goblin to become Goblin? Is the problems with that what transpires causes Osborn to actually become Goblin? Because as far as we can
I
tell,
could see them holding that off to even like a potential like
Yeah.
third game.
because it's interesting, right? Because I find it's a weird. The Spider-Man, Insomniac Spider-Man universe is such a weird universe because you have all these characters that have already been introduced, but by the 8 years into his career, he hadn't. Doc Ock had not been. He hadn't until then. He hadn't been like he hadn't fought Doc Ock, and Goblin's nowhere to be found in this universe yet. So I find it really interesting that the
Two
two
of his biggest
characters,
ones.
yeah, the two characters that, well, three, and Venom's not been introduced either. The
Yeah,
three
you're
big
right.
fucking villains of Spider-Man's life, he hasn't fucking experienced. He hasn't fought at all, which is going to be interesting. And like, yeah, they could hold Goblin off again for a Spider-Man 3,
Yeah.
but
Like they could just keep Osborn as Osborn and just keep teasing him as like, this could be the moment he becomes the bad guy. And you're just like,
but
all
no,
right.
yeah.
Like
No.
they've done
Oh.
real good at like a slow burn, pushing him into place kind of thing there.
It is kind of MCU levels of move the chess piece one step at a time until we get actual movement, which is interesting. Because I'm sure many people were just like, oh yeah, next game, Harry and fucking Norman are just going to be the main villains. And now you got Miles, and nothing of Oscorp or of Harry was mentioned in the slightest, except for that final scene. I'm sure.
Well, I
Well, I
think
mean, there's
some
no
of
real
that
reason
was
Miles would ever
Obviously,
be
it's because of
thinking about
Miles. Yeah,
Harry.
obviously, it's because of Miles. But it's just one of those things where it's like no one was expecting Miles to be the next thing. I think everyone was expecting Spider-Man 2, where Peter dies and Miles takes his place. But I think that's what most people were expecting, was a moment where Peter's just fucking gone and Miles has to deal with the repercussions. Whereas now we're just living in a world where apparently there's just going to be two Spider-Man we're fucking roaming, which I kind of like. I think it's something,
I like
again,
them.
it's something that no other Spider-Man universe has, is a Peter and a Miles who are both
YouTube
Spider-Man and are both from the same universe with no Spider-Verse fucking bullshit
YouTube.com/ReaperHunter23.
bringing them together, which I kind of like. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see. Have we forgotten everything, or is that everything, do you think?
we talked about the ending, we talked about the beginning, and we talked about everything in between.
I can't think of anything.
Yeah.
I think we've
Nothing
covered
comes
it.
to mind.
Nah, I think we're good then. So there you go. And I guess that's it. There you go. Spoilercast over. We're done. Well done, everybody. We haven't done one of these in ages, Hunter. I was looking.
Yeah.
It's been
Right.
like it's been nearly 20 episodes or something. It's been crazy.
September.
It was like September. It was like early September, I think. It was crazy. Oh well, we'll try and do these more frequently as game. We should really try and do these more frequently when their games are actually out. We're sorry we keep pushing them for so long. We'll try our hardest to get the next ones up in a more timely manner. We'll see. But with that, I guess that has been our show. So, Hunter, where can people find you?
YouTube. Sorry,
Oh.
youtube.com/ReaperHunter23.
Having a bit of my problem there, dude.
Yeah.
Kane, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. All usernames are Ganapaki.
And you can find me at Chaotic Ether on both Twitter and Twitch. Remember, our links are always in the description if you want to go check them out. With that has been our show. Thank you ever so much for watching / listening. We'll be back next week with our favorite games of 2020. But until then, have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Toodaloo.